All right, we're still talking about the tariffs, but now let's take it to the U.S. Part and find out how they are coping with it. Talking about Americans who are residents in America. So they say the U.S. president has given governments across the world a headache. That is no longer news. And there's a report now saying that Americans are beginning to feel the impact of this. And we know from the president, that's President Donald Trump's many talks, that the plan is to attract the manufacturers into America so that to boost economic activities and also create jobs. Now let's talk to someone who is in the United States. Dr. Malcolm Fabi. Dr. Malcolm Fabi is a climate technology and sustainability expert, but today he speaks to us, beyond this, to tell us how they are feeling this trade tariff, U.S. tariff, and all. Dr. Fabi, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nini. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Great. So are consumers in the U.S. feeling this trade war that's going on around you?
So I'll separate it into three markets. So there's the retail market, what happens in grocery stores. There's the stock market, where, obviously company stocks and equities are traded. And then there's the bond market, which is obviously affects mostly corporate entities and governments a lot more. You might be surprised to hear that in the retail markets, inflation has not hit the shelves yet, although there's an expectation that the tariffs would lead to higher prices. So here in the US, in March, inflation levels were about 2.4%, lower than the 2.8% that the values were in February. So actually here, month to month, and compared to previous years, inflation fell in March, which might be a little surprising to folks. But the expectation is that part of the reason why those higher prices haven't yet began to emerge is that the tariffs have just been placed, right? So Liberation Day for tariffs was April 2nd. And if tariffs are going to impact what is happening in the retail space, you would expect that those goods that are being tariffed would first arrive at port, then the tariffs would kick in, and what those tariffs would translate to would be higher prices. Now, where the impact of the tariffs have immediately been seen is in the stock markets. And so in the stock markets, as you I'm sure already know, there was a $10 trillion loss over the last 1 month in the stock markets as the market began to price in the impact of tariffs. And if you think about what a stock price means, a stock price in principle, when you go back to financial theory, is simply the present value of future cash flows. So if a stock price is the present value of future cash flows, the future cash flow is just profits to a company. What are a company's profits? A company's profits are its net revenues less its costs. And if a tariff is a higher cost, then what that obviously means is that future profits will go down. If future profits go down, then the net present value, the current value of those future profits is going to be less. And that's why you immediately saw that as the rollout of tariffs was done, stock markets began to crash because the markets began to price in the impact of those lower future potential profits. Higher prices in the stores means less people will likely buy. Higher tariff levels means less companies will be able to bring in shipments from the various companies where they're bringing those in. And then the other impact we saw obviously was in the bond market. The bond market saw about a 10% increase in yield. And the implication of that is that it is the bond markets where companies borrow from, where governments basically borrow from. U.S. Treasury yields, in this case in the U.S. Those markets, as I said, the yields went higher, and higher yields generally means higher interest rates from the Federal Reserve. Higher interest rates would mean the rates at which you borrow to purchase a car, to purchase a house, all those rates would go up. And so the expectation, as I indicated earlier, is that the retail market, where goods and services are being traded and bought by everyday people in stores, in car shops and things like that, the expectation is that that would begin to kick in the April, May timeframe. So we're in April, once the inflation numbers come come around in April, we are likely to see that prices have actually ticked up and inflation might actually begin to tick up as the tariffs begin to have an impact.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fabi, for that, very elaborate picture you have painted there. But, amidst all of this, some economist polls were done on how President Trump has handled the economy since he got into the Oval Office or into the White House. And there weren't very friendly figures that came out of that. But just the first-hand information from your community, what are the conversations about his handling of the economy?
So you're right. The latest polls that came out basically indicated that that President Trump was less than 40% in terms of the ratings that the American people had in terms of his handling of the economy. This is about a 15% drop from where he was in November. The reality is that the US elections, the last elections, turned largely on the economy. The expectation that Mr. Trump would boost the economy. And a lot of that was based on expectations that there might be reductions in taxes. Again, obviously, if taxes reduce, people have more money to spend. If they have more money to spend, there's more activity in the marketplace. And if companies are also paying lower taxes, then in principle, their cash flows are higher, stock prices would go up. And so one of the things that actually happened in November was that the US stock market went to record high levels once Mr. Trump won that election with those expectations. I think what a lot of people have been surprised by is the impact of tariffs, the way the tariffs were rolled out, the messaging around tariffs. So the messaging around tariffs was, there was a debate around, is a tariff a tax or is a tariff a tax cut? The reality is a tariff is a tax. And so if you don't message that correctly, as people have an expectation that a tariff means things might be better for them, when in reality, there is a short-term price to pay, and even perhaps a long-term price to pay. So the short-term price to pay is a tariff is a tax. A tariff just means when goods come to port, there is a higher price placed on those goods and services to enter into whatever nation is imposing those tariffs. And who pays the tariffs? Well, the tariffs end up being a pass-through. So if I pay 10% more to clear my goods, you can expect that my customers will pay somewhere between 0 to 10% to reflect the fact that my prices are higher, as long as I'm trying to retain some profits. So what has happened for the US consumer is, most US consumers would have, apart from the impact that they would have in the retail stores if they go to retail stores, many US households would tend to hold holdings in the equity markets. So a lot of people have, stock. In fact, in the US, things like pensions are typically held in what we call 401ks over here. So many pension funds actually place those funds in the stock market. And so when things like tariffs have an immediate impact in the stock market, where you had over $10 trillion of loss in the US alone over the last 1 month due to the tariffs, and about $30 trillion worldwide, roughly coming to about 20% of value. That has an immediate impact on people. It has an immediate impact on their spending capacity. It has an immediate impact in their overall holdings. It has an immediate impact in their concerns about the economy, an immediate impact in terms of their ability to spend. And that's what you're seeing reflected in the polls, that the polls, again, they're the lowest that Mr. Trump has had, in his political career, I think, and certainly one of the lowest over the last 70 years when a presidency approaches its first 100 days. So there are certainly headwinds, and I'm sure what is happening right now is that there's a recalibration of the tariff strategy that's beginning to take place, where the government has stepped back and has put in a 90-day hold in order to begin working out trade deals. And I would say that there probably is some opportunity for countries like Nigeria to take advantage of this situation. We've already started seeing some reports that companies, for instance, a number of Chinese companies that have assembly plants in Nigeria. So rather than push the products from China, where you are likely to be hit with a 145% tariff, well, why don't you increase your production in a place like Nigeria, where the tariff level is no more than 14%? That's a huge difference. A 145% tariff means the goods that are coming from China to the US at a 145% tariff level would be over 2 times their price, their current prices. If those goods were coming from Nigeria at a 14% level, because a Chinese company or some other company from a company that was hit with significantly high tariffs, if such high tariff levels remain, then there would be a strategic advantage to actually begin to rethink the geographic location of where manufacturing takes place. And again, I think this is an incredible opportunity for a place like Nigeria, where labor rates are remarkably low. We have a very highly mobile, highly intelligent, highly motivated, well-educated, young workforce. Our labor rates are comparable, and in fact, when you compare them to places like China and Asia, extremely low. So there is an advantage, and I'm hoping that the Nigerian government and private entities would begin to take advantage of this reshaping and restructuring of global economics that offers potentially significant opportunities for Nigeria.
All right, certainly we do hope that too. And yes, you shared that video with me off air, and well, I do hope that it's for real, and Chinese companies, for instance, will increase their production in Nigeria, because that will mean more jobs and more economic activities. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Malcolm Fabi, climate technology and sustainability expert, for staying up this early from the United States to join on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.